are basically two schools of thought about what should happen with the right hand. And this involves muting or blocking techniques. And the first one is the idea of palm blocking, where you play a string and set your palm down on it to block it. And the other one is the notion of pick blocking, where you play a string and then you set the same pick right back down on it to stop it, or possibly another pick. But ideally, we would like to have it so that our right hand is not moving around too much. In other words, it can stay in one spot and still access all the strings. And I'm primarily dealing with 10 or maybe 12 string steels in this scenario. So the way I approach this, as far as making sure that I have good mechanics going on with my right hand, is I bring my 3 picks together like this, almost like you're going to snap your fingers or something. And then that allows all this big fleshy part of my palm to pretty much from there to there just about covers those 10 strings. And at that point, if I keep this posture and just roll my picks over onto the strings, I'm going to pull my shirt sleeve back here a little bit so you can see this. This puts all my wrist and everything in a nice alignment. Everything from about this knuckle here all the way up to my elbows is all in a more or less a straight line. And there are several reasons that that's important. One of the reasons that that's important is because we think about playing with our fingers, but in reality, the tendons that control the movement of that finger run all the way through your wrist. They go through what's called the carpal tunnel. If you ever hear about carpal tunnel syndrome, this is the way we're going to avoid that. So those tendons run through your wrist. They run all the way up your arm, past your elbow, and all the way up into your shoulder. So when you're picking the steel, there's a lot more going on with your body than meets the eye here. And now, I've seen a lot of steel players adapt this sort of technique where their hand is flat and the picks are going straight down into the strings and their elbow is up. And this causes all sorts of problems with mechanics. And it also, over the course of time, can lead to that carpal tunnel thing because we have a big bend in our wrist here. And that sort of forces all those tendons to be jammed up, and it's not a good flow of things to have so what we want to think about is having the palm of the hand cover all 10 strings, and think about picking with the edge of the picks instead of digging straight in like this sort of thing. Now, when we're in this position, you'll notice an interesting thing happens. And I don't have particularly long fingers or particularly big hands or anything like that, but I want to illustrate a point. And that is that from here, I can take any one of my fingers and reach any string. It's going to be a little bit of a stretch for some of them, but it is possible. So I'm going to start with the thumb, and without moving my palm, I can go all the way down here to the 10th string. My palm is laying across it, muting it, and I can reach all the way from the 10th string all the way to the 1st string. Every single string covered without any forward and backward motion with my right hand. Same's going to hold true for my first finger. Now, this is a little bit of a stretch, and in practical situations, I probably would never do this, but for the sake of illustration, I want you to understand that this is possible. I can now take my first finger and reach all the way to the 10th string, all the way out to the 1st string. Every string covered. I can do the exact same thing with my middle finger. Once again, a big stretch probably would never happen in the real world, but here it is, 10th string, 1st string. So without any movement or gyration in any way, I can cover the entire guitar. So things to think about. This knuckle should be the highest place. The wrist and the arm should be in line with the end plate of the guitar. Every one of your fingers should be able to reach all the way across the guitar. And if we maintain all of that, that allows us to, when we actually start playing stuff on the steel, that allows us to use either the palm blocking technique with any finger, or it allows us to use the pick blocking technique with any finger. And it saves us a lot of wasted motion. The notion of economy of motion is very crucial no matter what musical instrument you're playing. You want to have as small a movements as you can possibly get away with. So the rest of my arm here. Now, I see a lot of steel players that they get a lot of tension in their shoulder, and their shoulder comes up towards their ear. What we want to do is exactly the opposite. Let that shoulder drop and flop. When it's down, we don't hold any of that tension in all of these muscles up here that cause us to tighten up when we're trying to play. So you want to let your shoulders drop, still having your spine in alignment. When that happens, this elbow is going to drop down, and all that stuff's going to be in a nice line. If you can get all those things happening with your right hand, not only will you be able to reach all the strings, but you'll do wonderful things for your tone. Because when the edge of your picks hit the string instead of the tip of the picks hitting the string, you get all this nice wide part of the pick, and that's where that big, pretty round tone comes from that all those guys I was talking about earlier all had. Now, let's go over here and talk about the left hand.